Hey guys, welcome back. For today, we're going to be making a sequel episode to the best designed abilities video I made at the start of this year. I know I was more focused on going over bad ones, cause honestly, it's more fun to complain about bad things than it is to talk about good stuff, but I did promise I was going to make another one, and I finally got around to working on it. So let's go over some more of the best designed abilities in League of Legends. Since it's been a while, I think we should review a few things from the first episode. In general, spotting a poorly designed ability is a lot easier due to negativity bias, a tendency to notice bad things over good ones and dwell on them for much longer. More often than not, if you were asked to think of a handful of attacks in the game that are frustrating to go up against, every single one of you will be able to come up with at least one within a few seconds. Usually that ability coincides with whatever beats you up the most. For example, I personally harbor a grudge towards Camille's precision protocol for bypassing traditional defense while scaling much harder than it has any right to. That's only because I'm a top main though, so I go up against Camille many times. On the other hand, it's a lot trickier to think of a well-designed ability right away, especially in competitive games. Maybe out of personal bias you would choose one from a champion you like to play, but when you're on the receiving end of it, you might form a different opinion considering all abilities in League are designed to give the user an advantage and/or the enemy a disadvantage. It's for this very reason that choosing objectively good abilities is rather challenging because if you're the target of that ability, it's at your expense. In light of that, deciding whether something was well made or not boils down to how few things it does that make people angry or upset rather than how many things it does that make people happy. Of course, that's a very inconsistent metric to go by from person to person, so let me remind you how I like to go about my selection. First, the ability should have some semblance of fair multi-purpose use, in that it can be used in a lot of different ways, but the onus falls on the player to make the best use of it at that specific time. So if it's able to do a lot of different things, it should mandate proper situational awareness or a set of conditions that prevent you from being able to just use it on autopilot. An example of a highly versatile ability that isn't fair would be Gwen's Hollowed Mist. While one would presume it's not that bad since she only gains the defense boost while in the zone and she's only untargetable from attacks outside the zone, neither condition is inherently counterintuitive to what she wants to do. Hollowed Mist is a very huge area that can reposition up to once over the duration, giving her a lot more freedom to move around than it looks. Also, avoiding any hostile effects outside of the area basically forces anyone who wants to deal with her to fight in melee range, which is what she wants, so her W is objectively a badly designed ability due to having no practical restriction to it. Second, there's enough visual or temporal clarity to the ability. The more impact it has, the more conspicuous it should be. That's often the reason global abilities have long delays to them. It would be extremely unfair if the summoner spell teleport was an instant cast since that would give you no time to react to an entire new champion entering the battle. The 4-second delay gives the enemy enough time to process that reinforcements are on the way and whether or not they should press on or fall back. Fortunately, Riot is pretty consistent when it comes to this. There are few abilities, if any at all, that take you completely by surprise. The only one that comes to mind for me would be Alawi's Tentacle Smash. I swear, that hitbox is a lie. I get hit by that so many times even though I know for a fact that I'm outside of it. Okay, so now that that's out of the way, let's go through the list one by one, starting with my two honorable mentions. First one goes to Jhin's Deadly Flourish, a long-range penetrating skill shot that stops on the first enemy champion struck. Despite being a basic ability, it has semi-global range, allowing him to snipe out enemies from well outside his immediate field of vision. The trade-off for his extended range is a narrow line of fire and delayed activation, during which the enemy can see the projected line. As far as damage is concerned, the numbers are not all that impressive, but you have to remember that Jhin usually has twice or sometimes thrice the amount of total attack damage compared to his fellow marksmen while with his passive, so it does a lot more than you think. Of course, that's not the main point of this attack. If an enemy champion took damage from either Jhin or his teammates, or if they triggered a Lotus Trap within 4 seconds, getting hit by Deadly Flourish roots them in place. So if you remember the first criteria, it should have dynamic but skill-expressive usage. It can be used as a scouting tool in Fog of War to snipe out a low-health target, to follow up in your team's engage, or to slow down pursuers if he's trying to escape. But to make the most use out of his W, something else has to happen beforehand, preventing you from having a long-range 2¼ second root for free. The second criteria is expressed through the cast delay and the bullet path, giving enemy champions plenty of time to sidestep or dash out of it provided they're not disabled. It's a strong but very fair ability. Second honorable mention goes to Sion's Decimating Smash. I know we just got through the whole Inting Sion debacle, but without accounting for recency bias, Sion's Q is one of the most clever ways to design a damaging ability I've ever seen. Over 2 seconds, he winds up for a massive attack, gaining more range, damage, and stun duration the longer he channels for. The attack itself covers an extremely large area with some of the highest base damage and scaling for a single ability in the game. But since he doesn't get the knockup unless he charges for at least a second, that gives you more than enough time to either get out of range or interrupt his channel. Some of you might argue that landing his attack is way too easy for how much it does, but remember that Decimating Smash is his only consistent damaging ability. Consistent being an overstatement in this context. Additionally, it's far more difficult for him to get a full channel off the more enemies he's up against, as that means more potential ways his channel can be interrupted. The only instances where he's conceivably able to land a full 2-second channel is if one of his teammates has a really long stun such as a max distance Ash arrow, or he engages with his own max ult. I mean, I suppose you can pull off some really funny cheese with this ability by using it in a brush, but many other abilities are also stronger in death brush scenarios. Outside of that, landing a full charged Q is a challenge, but boy is the reward worth it. So now it's time to move on to the main 5 that you saw in the thumbnail of the video. Galio's Hero's Entrance is ability number 1. As mentioned before, global ultimates are balanced by how long they take to use, and a very large indicator that they're being used. Hero's Entrance can only be cast on a target allied champion, upon which Galio lands beside the target while damaging and knocking back all enemies still within his big circle. Prior to that, he refreshes his W passive shield on himself, while at the same time granting it to all teammates in the area he casts it. Unlike other global ultimates which tend to be used by themselves, Galio's is more of a follow-up. He can either use it on someone being attacked or someone initiating attack. Either way, it's a very powerful but situational teleport that can single-handedly turn the fight around for his team. But unlike Shen Stand United, once Galio presses R, there's no turning back. Even if the target champion dies in the midst of his channeling, he will still arrive at that spot, potentially leading to his own demise as well. Alternatively, the battle can move away from its area of effect, rendering his entire engage useless, which sets him apart from Shen, who follows his target ally's position in real time. The main reason I chose this over other global ultimates is the reaction-centric element behind it. Other teleports like Talia, Pantheon, Twisted Fate, and whatnot are fairly designed in their own right, but offer way more freedom and accessibility, thus making them a little too pressuring on a macro level, whereas Galio's can only be used to react to a fight taking place, not to start a fight. Next on the list is Draven's Spinning Axe. Shoutouts to Draven who comments on all of my videos. Spinning Axe is arguably the most creative damage steroid on any marksman to this day. It's a persistently active buff that empowers his next basic attack to deal huge bonus damage, roughly double the original amount at rank 5. Afterwards, the axe bounces off the target to a nearby location. If Draven is standing on that spot, he gets to use the empowered attack again at no cost. Furthermore, Spinning Axe interacts with the rest of his kit. Every time you catch one, you get a stack of Adoration, which yields bonus gold when scoring kills on enemy champions. You also reset the cooldown of Blood Rush with every catch. Disregarding the passive and W effect, Draven's Q by itself is a fantastic ability. In exchange for huge damage on his autos, it forces you to move to a set location if you want to maintain that uptime, which can make your positioning more predictable, thus easy for your enemies to punish. But he can use Blood Rush and stand aside to make it easier for him to consistently and safely reach those spots. And if you coordinate your movements, you can somewhat influence where the axe will be. This is the pinnacle of risk and reward. Draven's autos can whoop your ass, but to optimize his damage output, he has to catch as many axes as humanly possible. It also makes him one of the best designed AD carries in League. They thought of a gimmick and then designed the rest of his kit to reward you for mastering that gimmick. Catch every axe and your DPS essentially doubles, and you get faster, and you get more gold for doing so. That and, style points. Watching a top level Draven player is honestly one of the most satisfying things you'll ever see in this game. Continuing on, we have Braum's Unbreakable. This is Yasuo's wind wall if wind wall was actually balanced. Braum puts up his shield in a set direction for up to 4 seconds that intercepts all hostile projectiles colliding with it from that direction, even if they were aiming for someone behind him, while reducing the damage he takes from it. Also, the first instance of damage dealt by a champion, projectile or not, is completely nullified, and during this time he can move around while facing that direction. The issue with Yasuo's wind wall is that it's simply far too good of an effect for how easy it is to use. Braum's Unbreakable is a much healthier way to design an anti-projectile ability. While he is able to move around, Unbreakable can only intercept projectiles in a set direction, so if it doesn't explicitly come from wherever he's facing, it doesn't work. Moreover, though reduced, he still takes damage in whatever follows, so if he catches Morgana's Q, he still gets rooted. Wind Wall on the other hand destroys any projectile that so much as touches it, whether behind, from the side, in front, doesn't matter. Once again, going back to the lack of skill expression needed. One more thing is that timing is of great importance for Braum, since it completely blocks all damage from the first attack. If he times it correctly, he can protect himself from heavy burst damage, like an accelerated shock blast from Jace or Jhin's force shot, even a strong melee attack like Nasus Q with 1000 stacks. This ability demands way more skill expression and has enough counterplay to prevent it from being unfair. Being able to intercept projectiles alone is very powerful in the right situation. Moving on, I want to talk about Orianna's ultimate, Command Shockwave, the OG Wombo combo ability. Wherever Orianna's ball is positioned, she unleashes a gravitational shockwave that damages and forces all enemies caught in it to the center of the blast radius. Given that the rest of her kit entails constantly repositioning the ball, there was no better ultimate to give her than this one. While the animation and cast time themselves may be less noticeable than the other ones I've talked about so far, it's an ever-present factor since it stems from her ball. So long as you pay attention to where it is, you will always be able to see it coming. Best of all, Orianna has a multitude of different ways to use it. She can either use Shockwave to start a fight by moving her ball right in between several champions, or she can attach it to herself or an allied champion with Command Protect, which turns them into a living Malphite ultimate. Thing is, the actual damage numbers are surprisingly underwhelming, but what makes this ability one of the most respected and feared in the game is that it pulls all enemies together, enabling her teammates to hit more targets with attacks that aren't as wide in coverage, so she trades raw damage for utility, though that doesn't mean you should underestimate her own pressure. Getting hit by Shockwave essentially guarantees a follow-up command dissonance. It's not the ability itself you have to worry about, not entirely anyway, it's what might come after. That in and of itself is what makes Command Shockwave not feel oppressive despite it potentially deciding the outcome of a team fight. Even though she has a lot of freedom in how to use it, her reliance on the ball's positioning serves as a preemptive form of counterplay. You can see the ball at all times. And wrapping it up with the final ability, we have Thresh's Dark Passage, very iconic. Thresh tosses his lantern to a set area which then grants vision of its surroundings for 6 seconds. Makes sense after all, it's a lantern, albeit a very creepy one. While standing near the lantern, Thresh and at most one other ally gain a shield that grows in strength equal to the amount of souls he has. Additionally, one of his teammates can target the lantern to dash towards Thresh's real-time location. For how simple its description is, there are a billion use cases for this thing. As you know, this game has a lot of enemy target dashes. Amumu's Q, Vex's ultimate, Wukong's E, Jax's Q, Pantheon's W, but there aren't that many ally targeted dashes. The only ones I can think of are Lee Sin and Braum. Even less so is an ally pull type ability. Dark Passage is the only one of its kind. With a tether range of 1500, he can allow any one of his 4 teammates to travel a large distance in a short period of time. He can use it to fish someone out of a bad spot or let them tag along for the ride if he dashes in with his hook. Thanks to it granting sight and collecting souls, he can throw Dark Passage to scout for vision or safely collect souls from afar. And with the shield, he can simply throw it on top of himself and someone else to give both a bit more staying power. Naturally though, to make the most use out of Dark Passage, both Thresh and his teammates need to know what to do with it, which can make things rather inconsistent as far as how good it is. Thresh mains know all too well the disappointment and frustration of trying to save someone only for them to burn all their escape tools when they could have just grabbed the lantern. That said, it offers some dynamic utility that can deal with contingencies no other support is able to, attesting to why he's one of the most popular supports of all time. Alrighty, so that takes care of the list, and for some reason my throat hurts. Once again, the focus of this video was to touch on abilities that offer a balance between skill expression and reward, or risk and reward. There were many other candidates that would have been easily featured in this video, but for the sake of time I wanted to just keep it at these 7. Some other examples are Rengar's Soul of the Hunt, Lee Sin's Dragon Rage, Pantheon's Aegis Assault, Gangplank's Powder Keg, Zillion's Time Bomb. Honestly, the list goes on and on. So you know what? I'm gonna leave a straw poll in the description if you want to see a 3rd episode. I mean, I did make a 3rd for the badly designed abilities, so maybe I can do one for the best designed. On that note, what are your 5 choices for well-designed abilities? Feel free to share them in the comments down below. Aside from that, if you enjoyed today's video, it would be awesome if you gave it a like and subscribed. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter, join my Discord server, and check out episode 1 of Best Designed Abilities if you haven't yet. But for now, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.